Dear participants, welcome to 7th International Symposium on Multidisciplinary Studies and Innovative Technologies. The symposium is organized by Tokat Gazi Osman Pasha University from Turkey. The symposium is technically sponsored by IEEE Turkey section. Thank you for your scientific contribution and support to the symposium. Dear Parvena Esmaili is currently lecturer in Computer Engineering Department at Cyprus International University. Prior to her recent appointment at the university, she was a lecturer in Electronic Department at Near East University and Computer Engineering Department at Girne American University. Dr. Parvena Esmaili received her undergraduate in software engineering from Iran Azad University, as well as her master's degree in hardware engineering from the same university, and her PhD in computer science at University Technology Malaysia in synchronized control of multiple robot manipulators. Dr. Parvena Esmaili published a number of papers in preferred journals and chapters in books. Also, she presented various academic as well as research-based papers at several national and international conferences. Her current research is on the deep learning-based classification methods on signals such as EEG signals. Dear Parvena Esmaili, if you want, if you are ready, you can start your presentation.
Thank you so much, Hocam. It is an honor to be part of this conference, and thank you so much for inviting me for this conference. If you want, I can start the presentation. Currently, I'm inside the university, and sorry about the sound if you're just coming here, because sometimes the students just coming around. I'm inside the lab, AI lab. So thank you so much for understanding. I will close the video and start the presenting for the deep learning classification.
Okay. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you so much. My topic for today is talking about the deep learning-based classification methods on EEG signals. As Professor told me about my field of study, I'm working on the robotic AI. But as you know, we have some robotic sites that we can control them by using our brain signals. And it's called as an EEG signal. So that's why this topic is interesting for me. So I can use my brain signals by seeing them. I can control any robots in my environment. So that's why I focus on this field of study. And I have one PhD student that together we are focusing on this deep learning series. As an introduction, we can say that electroencephalography classification, or EEG called, is a field of study within neuroscience and signal processing, which is focusing on the analyzing and categorizing the electrical activity of human brain as recorded the EEG devices. So EEG is a non-invasive techniques that electrical potential generated by neuron in brains, and these signals are a little bit noisy signals. And we read them and try to process them, analyze them to get insight into brain function, and can use for controlling any range of applications, including the clinical and diagnosis, cognitive research, and brain-computer interfaces. So here is some steps that we can consider for EEGs. First of all, we have to be able to record EEG signals. Then for that one, we are putting some electrodes on the scalp and try to get a voltage from the scalp, which is there are very small amount of the voltage, and it is so hard to read the data. So that's why we need a lot of amplifier to amplifying that signals and good signal reader for the systems, which is nowadays there are plenty of the reading devices in the outside, so we can buy and use them, but they're a little bit costly based on the data acquisitions. So after reading the data, we have to do also data acquisitions. So for data acquisitions, we need to consider the standards, because you can read information over there, but these should be standardized with most of the researchers. Then we can talk about the same area and analyzing the data. So there are some international systems like 1020, like the number of the electrodes, which is put it inside the scalp and try to read, or the system is 1010 systems. We are placing over there and try to read some specific data, because maybe everybody knows, based on our scalp, different place, they are giving different information to us. So in front is different information, backward is different information. So we need to place them perfectly, and our hair also is a problem. So we have some non-contact and contact with device for that ones. After considering the data acquisitions, we have to do the signal pre-processing, because the signals that we are reading from EEGs, they are noisy signals, and these sometimes they have the artifacts from the different sources, like the eye blinking. Whenever you blink your eyes, it will be affect your signals whenever we are reading from the brain. So for that one, we have to use some filters, doing some signal processing techniques to reducing the effect of noise and artifact. And also this data is so hard to read. So this signal pre-processing process should be very strong methodology. Also, after doing the signal processing, we have to do the feature extractions. So we have to find the good methodology to extract the information which is usable for our analyzing. Sometimes we have the information, but maybe they are not useful and they are just over there for doing nothing. So we have some type of the features like the spectral, power, coherence, statistical measurements. These will be used for classifications, because whenever we are going to classify the methodologies, we are not using exactly the direct EEG signals from the scalp. We are using the features extracted from that signals. So we have plenty of the applications for these EEG signals, which is using in the cognitive neuroscience to study brain process. And we check it out about the perceptron, attention memories, decision makers, which is the focus of my studies on the image detection, emotion detections, sorry. And these emotion detections play important roles in some decision-making and perceptron applications. So that's why I focus on one of the public and very standard data sets, which is called as the deep data sets. These researchers collected data from the 32 listeners and or video watchers, and then they just showing some videos, making some movies for them, and try to capture their emotion in that moment. So you can see Louis Armstrong song is just showing here, blur song is show them, and they capture the information from them, and they try to understand the happiness, sadness of the data based on checking the arousal scores and valence scores of the EEG part. So I'm not focusing exactly on the deep data sets, but that one is my case study that as a researcher, I'm working on it. Here, I will just introduce some classification methodologies, which is some researchers, if they want to focus on that, they can have a knowledge about that part. Deep learning has made significant contribution in the field of the EEG signal classifications, which is it will be help to our old methodology, convolutional methodologies, to help a little bit more accurate and more trustable techniques. So one of them is CNN. I think everybody's familiar with CNN. This is a famous one. And I'm going to just a little bit introduce at glance about the 1D and 2D CNN. Later on, I'm focusing on the RNN neural network, recurrent neural network. Two types of the RNN will describe here. And later, deep learning with attention mechanism will be considered here, which is useful for the some applications. Later on, going through the autoencoders and transfer learning, which is transfer learning is get a lot of attention nowadays. And for our study also, we focus on the transfer learning. And another one also is attention-based transformer models. So these two parts are just combined together. And then later on, I will introduce some hybrid model, which is going to combination of different models and use for the EEG classifications. Let's focus on the CNN methodology. Convolutional neural network is just used for considering the classification. If you remember, and most of the time it's just focusing on the 2D environment, or focusing on the images. So we have 2D convolutional neural network here, which is use our EEG signals. But that one should be image for the 2D. But here we don't have image for EEG signals because EEG signals are time series data. They are vector-based 1D data. So what they are doing, they said, okay, you have convolutional neural network is 2D, treated these EEG signals as 2D, considered time as a one dimension and electrode channels as another dimensions, and fed information into the 2D convolutional neural network. And by that, you can achieve the results. So as you can see here, we have the sample architecture about the CNN 2D, which is that one consists of 2 convolutional layers, as you can see here, which is followed by the max pooling layer for downsampling of the special dimension of the future maps. And flatten layer here is used to transform 2D information feature maps into 1D vectors, which is that one will fed into the fully connected neural network. Then finally, the output layer produce the classification results with number of the unit equal to the number of the classes that you have for your EEG classification. Most of the researchers, they are focusing on the binary classification. But nowadays, our problem is with multi-classification. We have to check it out, the multi-classes. And that's why, especially for Caesar classification, they are focusing on the multi-methodologies, which is later on, I will show one of the algorithms that they use. So another part is CNN 1D. So after this, they saw that 2D convolution is not very helpful because all the time you have to convert the data and achieve the classification. Is time consuming, it is memory consuming. So that's why they focus, the 1D convolutional network is just presented. Over there, 1D data, they just send it to the max pooling and then sending to the flatten for that pre-processing. So you can see automatically feature extraction will try to extract the spectral and temporal features from the EEG data and making applicable task for such a event-based applications that we call it as event-related potential detections. Another methodology is considered as RNN, or recurrent neural network, which is 2 different variants have LSTM and GRU, gated recurrent units. They capture the temporal dependencies in the EEG signals and making useful for the task like a sleep stage classification and image recognition, which is in our project also, we focused on the LSTM and GRU, and we saw a little bit good result from the LSTM and GRU, but because of the nature of the EEG, it needs a lot of work. So just LSTM is not giving the good result for you. So we need to combine them with the other methodology. So here we have the input sequence for the LSTM. As you can see, the first one is the LSTM. Sorry, I didn't mention the capture. So the input sequence is just recorded over the time and fed to the LSTM layer. LSTM layer consists of multiple LSTM layers. You can see this is plenty of the number of the cells here. And they are capturing the temporal dependencies. And after this, all the data are going through the output, which is that one can be softmax or showing the result in the classification can be considered as a regression as well, whenever we have that ones. So that's why it is good. So you can use for regression or you can use for the classification parts. And a specific number of the LSTM units is belong to the data sets that you are working on it, especially considering the activation function also is belong to your data sets that you are working. And LSTM networks are particularly useful for the tasks that involve sequence such as a time series analysis and natural language processing, which is so useful for our project as well. For GRU, you can see here a little bit difference here between GRU and LSTM. GRU consists of multiple GRU cells, which is in each cells you have a hidden states, and GRU cells capture the temporal dependencies from information from the input sequence while mitigating some of the vanishing gradient problems associated with traditional RNN. The output of GRU can be further processed through the fully connected layer and a output classification layer here. So you can adjust the number of the GRU units also based on the architecture of the fully connected layer. And also you have to be careful about the data pre-processing, hyperparameter tuning, and regularization techniques, because as I mentioned, these are not exactly useful alone for the EEG classification, and we need to pay attention a lot for their classification and pre-processing of the data. So another technique is the deep learning with attention mechanisms. So it is a structure of the sample models that we have. Attention mechanisms can be incorporated with deep learning models and focus on the specific EEG signals components like specific channels and times segmentations. These models are useful for the task that require the selective feature extractions, sometimes for the emotion recognition, especially we have also in our research, we try to use also this attention mechanism. We try to capture that from a lot of electrodes. We just capture 14 of them and try to focus on the specific channels and find the selective features from the model by using like the methodology like fuzzy logic system to select the specific features, which is so useful for classification, and they will increase the performance of the classifications. So in this model, EEG signals are first proceed through the feature extraction stage and consist of combination of the convolutional layers and recurrent layer to capture both spatial and temporal information. Inside this mechanism, we're going to have a self-attention or multi-head attention mechanism to focus on the specific components of the feature maps based on their importance. So they are considering the importance on the performance of the selection of the features. So that one will help to find the important data and delete the unuseful data, and try to also filterize the noise from the system and send the data to the fully connected layer and then output for the classification task. So for that one, the hyperparameters and all the parameters inside this architecture belong to the data sets and the task that you want to do. So it needs also a little bit hyperparameter tuning whenever you are doing the classification with this methodology. So another methodology that we have for these systems is autoencoders. Autoencoders, they are good for the feature extraction and dimensionally reductions, because as you see, EEG signals, they have the high dimensionally data, so we have to reduce them. So these autoencoders, they are so useful for that ones. Variational encoders are used for generating the synthetic EEG data for data augmentations. So that's why it is so important. You can see you are sending the inputs to the convolutional or recurrent neural networks, and that one will map the input data to lower dimensional latent space. So here, the output, it will be create the means and sigma. Then that one sent, which is that one comes from the multivariate Gaussian distributions and going through the latent space. So at the sampling layer also will use this information to just create the data, which is useful in the decoder part. You can see the autoencoders, they have encoder and decoder parts. So first part is just created the data, which is going to create the latent variable Z for that part. And then this Z variable sending to the encoder part and reconstruct the EEG data. Here, the loss function is a combination of three components: reconstruction loss that measures the fidelity of the reconstructed EEG, a KL divergence loss that encourages the latent space to follow a specific distribution like a standard distributions, and classification loss for EEG classifications. So during the model training, we have to minimize the combined loss to achieve a good result in these methodologies. So I'm going to also transfer learning. So the transfer learning is a little bit nowadays take a lot of attention. It says that one is good. Whenever you use the previously defined networks, it will be not time consuming for you, because you are not wasting a lot of time on designing any model. You are focusing on the other part of the design. So for that future extractions, a pre-trained model will be used, and that one can be considered any CNN model, any models that you have, like the using the CNN model for the ImageNet data sets for the feature extractor. And data pre-processed, whenever you got from the EEG, will be matched to the input requirements of the pre-trained model. So these two will be matched together. And then based on the fine-tuning, we are updating the hyperparameters, and then we're going to achieve the good results as a future extractions. Then we're going to send them for the neural network to train, to consider for classification part, and that one is connected to the fully connected layers and then going through the classifications. So the choice of pre-trained model is important, and that one is belong to the data sets that you are talking and task you are talking. It is so important, especially for EEG. For emotion detections, we are focusing on the transfer learning, but in the pre-trained model, we use some LSTM-based methodologies to consider that one, and we use some tuning methodology for updating the hyperparameters. Attention-based transformer models. Transformer architecture have gained popularity, as I mentioned. So self-attention mechanism in transformer, they can capture the complex relationship between the EEG channels and time points. So you can see here, we have transformer encoder and classification heads. The data sets, whenever you have the data sets, that one will go through the pre-processing part, and tokenization sections will use the, for splitting the EEG sequence into the sequences or time steps. And that one will send to the multi-head self-attention mechanism. So that one will capture the dependency across the time steps. And later on, it will be sent to the feed-forward network to process the attention outputs. And layer normalization, this is the normalization layers and residual connections for improving the training stabilities, and multi-stack transformer layer to capture the complex temporal relationships. So classification head is added to the transformer architecture to perform EEG classification. That one will extract the features from the output of the transformer of the encoder, and may use global average pooling here, or sequence level attention to aggregate the information. So fully connected layer and output layer are used for classification model training, which is involving the loss functions, such as cross entropy and conducting the fine tuning and hyperparameter tuning for optimal performance. So we set some methodology that we had until this moment. Nowadays, just using that methodology itself, it will be not satisfy us. So that's why most of the designer, they're focusing on using the hybrid deep learning approaches, because EEG signals is a lot of noise, is a noisy data, and they have a lot of perturbations and artifacts. It will be affect a lot. Muscle movements affect a lot, and sometimes we are not capturing anything whenever we have the data. So this here I just mentioned some methodology, hybrid methodology that they use nowadays, the researchers. So I did not mention the paper address, but if you want, I can provide you the papers for that specific methods. So the first one is deep conv LSTM, EEG-net, CLSTM, BI-LSTM, CNN, DAN-net, MTCNN, EEG-net, HDASE, CNN, and CRF BAE. So I'm just fastly trying to introduce you to cover all of them in our limited times. So deep conv LSTM, based on the name, you can see this is combination of the convolutional neural network, CNN, long short-term memory, LSTM, which is that one. They combine together and try to capture the special information from the EEG electrodes, while LSTM are employed to model temporal dependencies in the data. EEG-net is a hybrid model architecture designed for EEG applications. It combines convolutional layers with deep-wise separable convolutions and temporal convolutional layer to process EEG data effectively. CLSTM, which is was the last papers that I saw last week, and I like very their work, to be honest. This CLSTM architecture combines the convolutional layer with long short-term memory, is LSTM, to simultaneously capture spatial and temporal features in EEG data. The combination is well suited for various EEG classifications. HDASE CNN, it is hybrid deep architecture for spatial encoding, which is inside that one. That model combines spatial encoding and convolutional neural network for EEG based, which is that one is useful for emotion recognition. We didn't pay attention for that one, to be honest, but it is very good methodology to take a look at that one and involve in our research. And CRF VAE, that one is a conditional random field, which is considered as a variational autoencoders combination with the conditional random field. It is a hybrid model uses for EEG-based encoding task in brain-computer interface for online tracking as well. As you know, okay, offline tracking, offline classification is perfect, but it is not useful whenever you are dealing with the patient over there. So it will be online. So for online applications, the conventional method is not useful. So we have to focus on these kind of methodologies. Another one is the BLSTM CNN. This is a hybrid model, combines the bidirectional LSTMs with convolutional layer to capture both the temporal and spatial aspect of the EEG for classification task. And another one is domain adaptation attention networks, which is a hybrid of the deep learning with domain adaptation techniques to address the domain shifts and variation in EEG data collected from the different sources or setting. And that one is focused on the multimodal classifications. You can select multi data from different environment, like the muscle from the hand or brain. So they are considering the MEG and EEG signals together as well. MTCNN EEG-net, this is a hybrid model considered of the multitask convolutional neural network with EEG-net to simultaneously perform the facial feature detections and EEG-based emotion detection. That one also is a multimodal classification. So it is useful because you can capture also picture and you can see EEG together, and they are cover each other whenever they have a same models. So as a conclusion, for applications like the brain-computer interface, as I mentioned, real-time EEG classification models, they are developed to enable the rapid and accurate prediction of the user intentions. And it is important to note that the choice of deep learning architecture depends on the specific EEG classification task, data set you are using, computational resource availability, considered, you have to be careful about that one. So additionally, proper pre-processing, data augmentation, and hyperparameter tunings are essential for achieving the optimal results in EEG classification by using EEG, by using deep learning inside that applications. So it is my presentation for today. I hope that one was useful for you. And I just introduced some methodology that we are working on it and try to achieve the good result over there. And nowadays we submit one of the papers about that one. Previously we submitted one conference paper, and this conference, which is valuable for me, this conference. And we try to continue our work on this field of study. And I hope you enjoy the presentation for today. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. The department, do you have any question about the study?
Okay, yes, go ahead.
About the presentation? Okay, no
Is there a
question.
question I can answer? No question. So to be
Thank
honest,
you very
Hocam,
much.
thank you so much for inviting me. But I'm also open about doing the research together, have a collaboration. If anyone wants to collaborate on this field of study, I will be happy to collaborate with you. Okay, keep it in mind.
Okay.
Just
Thank you. Thank
thank you
you.
so much for
Thank you very
having
much
me. Have a good
for
time.
accepting our invitation. Thank you very much for your presentation and
Thank you so much.
valuable information you have provided. I wish
Thank you
you
so much.
continued success in your career.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Glad to see you guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good time.
Have a
Bye.
good time. I wish you good days.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, the special session is over. I want to end the special session. I wish you a good day, dear participants.